Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 31st of May 2023. And these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We will begin with our first two segments, in fact, concern the economy of Pakistan. The first is the importance of foreign direct investment as far as Pakistan is concerned in the whole context of the visit from Belarus, and how different negotiations have gone forward as far as strengthening Pakistan's economy is concerned. Also, how can we make investment in Pakistan or the environment for investment in Pakistan friendly, so that more and more countries, more and more people from different countries come and invest in Pakistan. What are the facilities that need to be provided? This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, also concerns economy and concerns the relationship between Pakistan and the IMF. What is the future course of action? Why is there a certain delay as far as the decision to be taken by the IMF concerning Pakistan is concerned? Will we be hearing good news in the next coming days? Only time will tell. Nevertheless, what needs to be the prerequisites as far as Pakistan is concerned to strengthen its relationship with the IMF? This is going to be our second segment. Then we will be talking about the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Islamabad that has held recently an event to commemorate the 75 years of UN peacekeeping, and of course this is also to highlight the more than 200,000 Pakistani service women and men who have served in 46 United Nations missions since 1960, including 171 who have lost their lives. Pakistan is among the largest troop contributing countries to the United Nations peacekeeping force, with nearly 4,334 military and police personnel currently working in different countries across the world under the UN auspices. This is going to be our third story. Our fourth story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the United Nations Weather Agency that has announced that it was making the cryosphere a new top priority, saying that the melting of sea ice, glaciers and the permafrost poses a global threat. We've also seen that in Pakistan as well, how melting of the ice poses a grave problem as far as climate change and affects Pakistan as a country is concerned. Now, we will be discussing that as part of our fourth story. And our final story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the AI. Now, global leaders should be working to reduce the risk of extinction from our artificial intelligence technology, as a group of industry chiefs and experts have warned that policymakers need to equate its threat on par with risks posed by pandemics and nuclear war. We think AI is a lot of fun. We see ChatGPT, but there is much more to it, much more that could be extremely dangerous for the future of the world. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns Pakistan's economy, whether it be foreign direct investment, whether it be Pakistan's economy as a whole. What needs to be done to make investment in Pakistan more friendly, the environment for investment in Pakistan more friendly? More in the following report.
Pakistan is navigating a challenging economic situation as the country grapples with impact of Ukraine war, climate ravages and global economic recession upon domestic economy. PDM government is trying to boost foreign direct investment and resume the stalled IMF program in order to address falling the reserves and ease the balance of payment crisis. The government of Pakistan has taken tough measures, including increasing taxes and energy prices, cut back on subsidies and allowing its currency to weaken so as to gain macroeconomic stability. The government is also trying to catalyze financing from other sources, such as Pakistan and Belarus have aspired to build a comprehensive and mutually beneficial partnership that contributes to the prosperity and well-being of the people of both the countries. The long-term goals for Pakistan-Belarus partnership include strengthening economic ties, expanding trade and commerce, and fostering scientific collaboration. Pakistan has a liberal foreign investment policy that allows 100% profit repatriation, making the return on investment of foreign investors more attractive. Foreign direct investment provides access to capital, technology and markets. It also exposes our industrial sector to competition from abroad in a phased manner. Government's efforts to stabilize the economy are producing lucrative results, as foreign direct investment in the country saw an uptick in March 2023, a rise of almost 62% month on month. Also, the FDI was the second highest in March 2023 during the ongoing fiscal year.
Dr. Usman W. Chohan, leading economist, joins us online. Usman, thank you very much to have joined us. As I always say, it's always a pleasure to discuss economy with you because there are so many different facets that you bring out to the forefront. Let's talk about the foreign direct investment and Pakistan. We have had a Belarusian delegation that was here. A lot of important decisions were made regarding investing in Pakistan, regarding strengthening Pakistan's economy. With the economic crunch that Pakistan is going through, how can we make foreign direct investment in Pakistan more lucrative for other countries, for other investors? Usman, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry, the audio was not working earlier.
All right. All right, I'll repeat the question. I was just saying that there was a Belarusian delegation recently here in Pakistan. A lot of important MOUs were signed, and of course, decisions to strengthen collaborative efforts in the field of economy is concerned. When it comes to foreign direct investments from different countries in Pakistan, over the last few months, we see that there are certain actors that are strong, others that aren't. How can we make foreign direct investment in Pakistan, whether it be from countries or from expatriates, more lucrative for those countries and those people?
It's a fantastic question, you know, but there's so many aspects to it. The most important aspect right now, I believe, is that we need to have one good deal. One good deal means that you have to have one flagship deal that lays out a quality, reliable, consistent deal that opens the deal flow for other things. Once you have one good deal of a large scale with a credible counterparty and we live up to our obligation on it, then you will start to see a huge flow through. It wouldn't be a trickle, it would be a huge flow through. But right now, the global investor community is waiting for one such large good deal to happen to see that, okay, Pakistan is now back in action. There's so much promise in our country to do things, and we are just waiting for one good deal to happen, and we need all stakeholders on board, private and public, for that one good deal to happen.
All right, when you talk of different collaborators that need to strengthen Pakistan's economy and foreign direct investment in Pakistan, let's go towards certain statistics, and that from the State Bank of Pakistan. For a second month in a row, the FDI has jumped month on month by 62% to 163.4 million US dollars in March, against a net outflow of $30.4 million in the same month last year. In your point of view, what are the factors that contribute to an increase in outflow of the FDI?
So I believe that our state bank has taken a very strong position on maintaining a current account surplus. The way that it has said is that there is a floor under which you cannot go, and that is critical in a time when there is a global monetary contraction. There is a lot of tension in the global economy. People are talking about the United States defaulting. For crying out loud, I mean, the world is all topsy-turvy. So in that position, the monetary authority says we cannot go below this number. And that actually means that whereas the potential may be higher to do things, you have to keep this constraint in mind, since risk and reward go hand in hand, and they have a zero risk tolerance right now. That is essentially what is holding us back, and that's been holding us back since 2022, because you must remember, you and I, we are all at the mercy of large global currents, transformations, and nobody really knows what the future will be like. And when I mean future, I don't mean 6 years, I mean 6 months or 6 weeks even. We just don't know.
All right. Now, Usman, also the fact remains that Pakistan has gone through a lot of conditionalities, let's put it that way, in the last year or so that have further dampened its economic outlook. If you go towards the current account deficit, during the last decade, the country has incurred a current account deficit of 83 billion US dollars. Do you feel the road ahead, the road forward in order to improve the trade balance will be an arduous one? What needs to be done by our country? What needs to be done by those who are in power in Pakistan in order to make this a smooth way forward?
Your question is very powerful and very loaded for two reasons. It says, what should the powerful people in Pakistan do? And the second is a deficit really required? Do we need to have some pinch before we have something good? The answer to both is that yes. The answer is that the way our economy is structured right now, even to produce something of value to export, we have to import. To sell something, we have to buy something. We don't have an indigenous system of production, which is to say that all the factors of production cannot exist here. We understand that to some extent, like energy cannot be, but there can be a lot that can be indigenized and it is not. That means that you have to get something to give something, and when what we need to get becomes expensive, then what we need to give is not rising as much. That is our fundamental problem. So what I'm arguing to you is that our value chains need to be more indigenized, and the value creation, the higher end of value creation in just about any industry, has to come from indigenous maximization or capture of the value of things we produce. A lot of that value is then taken by somebody else outside, so we lose out. That is a fundamental problem with our position in the global value chain. So that I think is good. It's not that we don't do much, it's just that what we do, we don't get the maximum value out of it. And the second part is that
I like the word, Usman, indigenous maximization. I like the term indigenous maximization. Now, which sectors do you feel need this maximization in Pakistan?
Well, the ones that are most important to us. That includes agriculture. That includes the primary resources. That includes, for example, our mining. We have so much potential in mining. We're not maximizing it. Even things like forestry. These are in the primary. Then in the secondary, there's a lot, for example, in the manufacturing sector, which can include consumer staples to durables to the auto sector. I mean, you can really name all of them, and all of them have become too entangled in global value chains without getting enough value for them out of it. We don't get enough out of it, but we're entangled in that web. A big part of that is also our relationship to the dollar. And we're struggling with the whole dollar scene. In fact, the United States is struggling with the dollar scene. So that is tricky for us. Another thing that you raised, which is very important, is that all of our key stakeholders, decision makers, have to prioritize the economy. There's a lot else going on which is distracting us from what really, really matters for the benefit of a young country with so much potential. That's what I would argue to you.
I totally agree with you. This is a young country, but with a lot of potential. Debt to GDP ratio, it has aggravated from 30.9% to 39.7% between 2012, June 2012 to June of the current year. It has been increasing disproportionately by 88 basis points every year. Is foreign direct investment the only solution?
Investment is the best solution. And the fact that you are framing this discussion today in terms of investment is more important because we have seen too much dependency on loans, when in fact counterparties who are extending credit, for example, bilateral friendly countries, they actually want to do investment here. They don't want to do credit. They don't want to extend loans and then worry about repayment. They want opportunities, and that's where I argue to you again that we need that one good deal. Even if our big counterparties, which are big game hunters, for example, in the Gulf, they want big, nice, juicy deals in the sense that high returns in a good environment that creates value for the Gulf and for Pakistan, whichever country it may be, could be Qatar, could be Saudi Arabia, whomever it is, they want something worth investing in, and we have that. We actually need to create the system to absorb that size of deal, because it's not in the tens of millions or 100 millions, we're talking about tens of billions. Can we even absorb that? In principle, yes, but on the ground, we in fact cannot. So we have to create the absorption capacity for that amount of money coming in and to deploy it and create returns of that size. It's a very big game now that our counterparties want.
Usman, let's talk about the mega projects that we've seen in the last decade or so. The long-term financing for export-oriented projects, 2006-2007, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor starting from around 2015, the temporary economic refinance facility in 2021. Are these projects enough? What more needs to be done? What more initiatives need to be introduced, in your point of view, as somebody who understands economy, to incentivize foreign investors?
You've listed some of the most important ones already. So if you look at each of them, there is always a phase two or a follow-up where rigorous, diligent homework needs to be done. That homework is our responsibility, and it has not been done to a sufficient amount. If you take CPEC, phase two involves much more private sector involvement on the Pakistan side. That is where the responsibility lies, that the private sector here have that absorptive capacity, not just in resources, but also in acumen, to be able to drive the special economic zones that are integrated into the infrastructure, which was phase one. With turf, it's a different story because that was a very prudent decision to stimulate capex investment in things like textile at a time when COVID was crushing the global economy. And you know, Pakistan did a stellar job during COVID. So a lot of the sectors that received stimulus, particularly construction and textile, they invested in advanced capacity for the future. But the global economy then was so bad that capacity has been utilized. Again, it's a question of where we should have absorptive capacity, we don't, and where we have invested, we cannot use it. And so each project has either too much or too little, and we have to strike the optimum balance is the short answer to what you're saying.
When you talk utmost balance, how can we not, how we cannot disregard the small and medium sized enterprises, the SMEs as we call them. What policy incentives, in your point of view, need to be introduced now in this day and age in 2023 to encourage investment in the SMEs in Pakistan?
There are questions of stability in each of the factors of production that are required. The stability, for example, in the energy grid. Having stable, cheap energy is an advantage that our competitors use against us in the global markets. We need to have stable and consistent energy. The same applies to a stable business environment, which means that they should be able to plan ahead with investments, that they would have a market that buys at a certain thing, and that also involves how much they borrow at. Our interest rates are very, very high. It's not conducive to do business at this level. You should just sit on your money at this point. So creating the stable, conducive environment is very, very necessary.
Do you feel that export-oriented sectors and IT sectors are those in which Pakistan needs to really apply all its efforts in order to bring in as much of FDI as possible? Do you feel these need to be prioritized, or do you feel others need to be prioritized on the same level?
You're asking a very powerful question, because your judgment is as good as mine in what should be prioritized. Because the truth is that any sector of the Pakistan economy is important, since we're a large country. It is not that we're a small island with one or two industries, an offshore banking sort of thing. We are the world's fifth biggest country. And that means that we should have the world's fifth biggest economy at least. And that means that you will have all sectors, and I wouldn't prioritize IT or any others, but I wouldn't deprioritize IT either, which is to say that even the primary things start to matter, and it depends on the global economic environment. For example, food has become very, very dicey and pricey in the last 2 years. You may think food is not an attractive sector, but believe me, right now the world is putting a premium on food, which is far less attractive in terms of the marketing.
But Usman, there are reports that say that despite the increase in prices in food items in Pakistan, Pakistan still remains one of the cheapest countries as far as living conditions are concerned across the world. So this whole phenomenon is more of a global phenomenon, just a regional or a country-wide phenomenon. Do you agree? Precisely. But the reason that it is so cheap also means that the people are not willing to pay the right price for it, which is to say that things in Pakistan should be more valuable. For example, it should cost a little bit more to rent in Pakistan or to invest in our stock market or things. For example, our equity market has traded at a discount relative to the value and the dividends that are given, which means that it's almost prejudice against it. And I don't want the prejudice against something that is so high potential to create a discount where it isn't. It actually should be more pricey to live and do things in Pakistan, because people are discounting it too much given how wonderful it can be. Usman, I'd like to refer to two reports. The first is of 27th of March 2023, the World Bank report on falling long-term growth prospects, trends, expectations and policies, that says that nearly all the economic factors that have powered global progress and prosperity over the last 3 decades are fading. At the same time, we've had a new report that has come from our ministry as well, that says that that our economy faces serious fiscal risks. Globally, I understand there's a huge economic crunch that is grappling the world, including countries, as you yourself have said, the United States of America. But coming to Pakistan, as we always, think more nationally instead of globally or regionally, what can Pakistan do in order to avoid these fiscal risks that even our ministry has now talked about in a report?
It is a fantastic question. The reports that you're citing are the most important ones. And it is a question now of bolstering our fiscal strength through everybody getting together. Because what is reflected in fiscal risk is what you collect in as the state versus what you disburse out. We need to disburse out much more for the welfare of the people by taking in much more. And everybody needs to come on board. If I tell you stories of how our revenue collection falls short of what it needs to, you wouldn't be surprised. In fact, you may know more about it than anybody. The fact is that we know what is wrong with revenue collection in terms of the fiscal sustainability. And what are you aiming for here? You're aiming here for strong reserves for a rainy day. And the problem is it's very rainy right now, and that means that because we haven't had the reserve strength, the reserve cushion, we face the mercy of the global economy much more severely. And it didn't need to be this way if we had more of a cushion, because there are countries that are really, really badly managed out there, but because they had some cushion, they don't look as bad today. Whereas a country that has much, much more potential like ours happens to look more precarious just because it didn't have the cushion. So building that cushion requires everybody to come together and have a strong fiscal basis of constructing society.
Usman, our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif chaired a meeting in Lahore yesterday concerning budget proposals, in which he talked about cutting the cost of production by providing cheap energy to the industry, and also asking banks to provide loans to small industries on easy terms. He talks about the industrial sector that needs to be strengthened. How do you see his statements as far as Pakistan's industrial sector is concerned? Do you feel our industrial sector needs more incentives?
Oh, it's a fantastic question. Our Prime Minister understands industry, particularly the Punjab-related industrial base, very, very well. He has been a tenured counterparty to them, helping them to develop in Punjab. And he understands the dynamics, so he understands the limitations. And therefore, the recommendations that he is making are very accurate. But if our government is doing targeted things to solve problems, it should also make us think, why aren't there natural incentives for the community to do this anyways? It would be in their benefit to achieve profits and to have large economic growth, and yet something isn't getting in the way. So that something in getting in the way is actually what the government should be working on, instead of targeted one-time things, because one-time things is how our economy has been run for a generation, 2 generations. And that's not a good way to deal with things.
Usman, I'd also refer to what Ishaq Dar Sahab, our finance minister, recently said. He said the current government has introduced a number of policy initiatives to bring stability and growth in the economy. And this is what I want to ask your opinion on, improving ease of doing business. How important is improving ease of doing business in order to bring FDI, more FDI into Pakistan?
It is just about as important as the other factors we have mentioned, which is stable energy and political stability. Having ease of doing business means that you and I can shake hands and start a business tomorrow. That is the goal we're looking for. And we should be able to do it. There are countries that do that. They allow for it. They even make, bubble societies where they like special economic zones where these things can be done outside of the legal systems, outside of whatever system. So they prioritize ease of doing business to such an extent that they will even bypass their own systems to make sure business happens successfully and stably. And that is what we should be aiming for. So when our finance minister lays emphasis on that, I believe he is laying the correct emphasis.
Usman, our ministry's economic advisors wing has taken out a report that I also mentioned a couple of minutes back as well, in which they mentioned certain downside risks of supply disruptions, inflationary pressures, synchronized policies, high base effect that continue to prevail. How can one counter this and at the same time make Pakistan a more interesting avenue to invest in?
The limitations that you've mentioned from that report are indeed very severe, including things like a high base effect, but also things like inflation. But if you ask for my personal forecast, and this is not financial advice, but just my personal forecast, I think things are going to get better, not just for Pakistan, but for the rest of the world, starting at the end of this year. What we have gone through is basically the second aftershock of COVID. COVID seems like it happened a century ago, but in fact, COVID paralyzed everything, and the jump-started economy after that was very lopsided. We're still dealing with the convulsions of that. These convulsions will begin to abate and recede, which allows for more stable long-term trajectories in economic growth to be achieved. So I'm not so worried about things like a high base effect, nor am I so worried about inflation in the longer run, because what we are seeing are distortions of a previous epoch in its aftershocks today. So I think we should have an optimistic outlook, as you always do as well, towards the economy going forward. I think that's what we need as well, a good outlook, positive
And I
outlook as
think
well.
that, with a positive outlook, with an optimistic outlook like myself, you yourself, Usman, have, I think that is the basis for moving forward. There you can always look at the glass half full or half empty. It is how you move forward with that changes your whole outlook of how to strengthen your country and your country's economy. Thank you so very much, Usman, to have joined us and of course talked as candidly as you could about different factors concerning FDI in Pakistan, and that is of course extremely important amongst other factors concerning our economy. Let's come to another factor that of course concerns our economy and the current situation that we are in. That concerns our relationship with the IMF. It has had its ups, it has its downs, but recently we are waiting for IMF to give us the nod. There is a certain delay as far as the IMF is concerned, but there is a certain hope that from the IMF in the form of a statement that has recently come that the IMF might come with a decision regarding Pakistan sooner than later. We've been joined by Dr. Ghulam, the Economist, CAREC Institute with the Asian Development Bank, with us online. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. It's always a pleasure, as always, to talk economy with you. The IMF. So many question marks when it comes to the IMF. Why is IMF delaying everything? Why is IMF not giving Pakistan the money that has been promised to it? Why, despite the conditionalities that have been met with Pakistan, is there still a delay? Nathan Porter, the IMF mission chief to Pakistan, says they are engaging with Pakistan to pave the way for the board meeting. How significant do you feel is the timing of this statement by Mr. Porter?
Well, thank you so much, Bursar, for having me. I think in terms of definitely buy it. And I do think that the seriousness of the government, I think, has been backed by the Nathan statement. If you can see from the Prime Minister engagement, he been engaged with the managing director of the IMF last Saturday, and I think that really show the seriousness of the government of Pakistan, that they really want to be engaged with the IMF. And in returns, I also am very positive and optimistic about the IMF concern that they are really looking forward to be engaged with Pakistan. So in terms of optimism, totally butts up, I buy the argument from the both sides. There is a positive hopes are there. However, if we can look into the kind of a historical perspective, both sides they have their own kind of concerns. Government of Pakistan from one end had already fulfilled a multiple of the kind of a conditions that was put forward on the table by the IMF. But at the same time, I feel also a little bit more concerned about the kind of securing their external financing. And currently, they are a little bit more concerned about the sharing of the budgetary framework. So those are some of the concerns. I think they are still on the table. But I do hope very soon, looking to the seriousness of the Pakistan economies, I'm hopeful that IMF will definitely come forward with some positive gesture this time.
Now, Porter has spelled out conditionalities that Pakistan has to meet in order to reach an agreement with the IMF, which include arranging foreign loans, approval of a new budget that is in line with the IMF framework, and that is important because our budget is just about around the corner, restoration of foreign exchange markets, proper functioning. In your point of view, what kind of progress has been made so far? Sunday, Finance Minister Salda did say Pakistan will share its budget details with the IMF, but what about the rest?
Well, in terms of the budgetary framework, I think this is something a bit more concern of the IMF. And IMF, like, if we can look into the previous government perspective, it was kind of a populist decision that been taken in the previous regime. So this time again, IMF is concerned that whether this government is going for an election budget budget will definitely been care with the concern of their economic conditions. This is something I think really IMF is concerned, and I can see now from the government seriousness that the government recently I think shared the budgetary framework with the IMF regarding the another conditionality that is about the differences or managing the open markets and internal bank rates. There also, I don't think there's a serious kind of there's still gap is there, but I think the government can manage that gap as well. The last thing that is actually kind of a little concern for IMF that securing the foreign finance is about $1 billion, right? So if you look into the account deficit, government has already working along and already freeze the current account deficit. So I think now we have much more in the plate to discuss with the IMF that hey, we had already reduced the current account deficit. Though there's a cost to the economy, I agree. And now
Dr.
we
Saab,
reduce the current account deficit. So now in terms of condition,
Dr. Saab, Pakistan has taken the measures that the IMF asked it to take. You talked about current account deficit, then then they asked about increasing taxes, increasing energy prices, cut back on subsidies, allow currency to weaken as well. Despite these measures, what in your point of view is currently hampering the ninth review of the IMF? Is it because the IMF maybe wants to combine the ninth and 10th review, but this is something that Pakistan does not want, and I'd like to quote Ishaq Dasab on it, that if the IMF combined both the reviews of the bailout, we will not do it, we see it as unfair.
but sir, I think in terms of the main concern of the IMF, that what I can see from my perspective is the sharing of the budgetary framework. They really want government this time has been going to propose in their budget, along with those kind of funds. For example, whether the government is really cutting down their subsidies, whether the government really concerned about their expenditure reducing, whether the government really concerned about increasing their taxes revenue. Is there any kind of expansion, I would say, in terms of increasing the tax net? So those are something IMF is really concerned, and they want to see what practically step has been taken in the budgetary framework by the government. The rest, I don't think, are serious concern this time for the IMF, because the IMF is also concerned in terms of the seriousness of the Pakistan economy has been ailing. At the same time, the livelihood of the people in terms of increasing inflation more than 40%. IMF is also concerned about that thing. But at the same time, they also want to secure the ninth review approval of if there's a big if combined with the 10th, probably it will be in the best interest of the government of Pakistan rather than wasting those money.
All right, Dr. Ghulam Sabat, I'd also like to understand about the delicate balance that this government has to go through. On the one hand, it has to appease the IMF with its tough sanctions or conditionalities. On the other hand, it has to also appease the people of Pakistan, which are going through a lot of issues with the economy of Pakistan and the prices that are soaring of every single product that they are buying on an everyday basis. How can, in your point of view, the current government walk this tightrope between the IMF and the people of Pakistan? Do you feel it will be an easy task?
No, but sir, it's really been a hard task for the government of Pakistan, especially when it comes to the security, the livelihood of the people of Pakistan. If we can look into the unemployment has been surging in Pakistan, inflation, food inflation, inflation, urban inflation, it has been very, very high, in Pakistan. But sir, at the same time, I think my opinion would be, if we just think of, if we are not going to IMF, what are the options with us, right? So that is something really we need now to compare ourselves in a situation when we are not going to IMF. If, for example, we are not going to IMF, we are not going to appease the IMF, the consequences to me would be more severe. But for example, the security for the next IMF program. We need to go for a next IMF program because for the next financial year, around the realistic kind of understanding is that the next I would say like it would be something the requirement for the next fiscal year would be the range from 25 billion to 35 billion dollar, right? So having in the IMF program, I think that would secure the foreign financing for around 25 billion dollar in next year. It will also give us a shoulder for the World Bank, for the ADB, and for the other multilateral bank as well. But just in case, if we did not go to IMF, it seems to me the inflation rate in Pakistan will not come down. It will be further increasing. So my overall kind of suggestion would be for a government of Pakistan. I think it's time that we consider the IMF program rather than we are not considering it. And I mentioned at the very beginning, the government of Pakistan is seriously concerned about the IMF program. But I agree with you that the seriousness for the livelihood of the people of Pakistan is the concern. What I would suggest to secure the livelihood of Pakistan people, I think it's time to negotiate with the IMF for this budgetary framework, and they should allocate kind of a Benazir income support program, something a kind of a supplementary funds for the livelihood of the people of Pakistan. And I think IMF has no issues there to secure the livelihood of people of Pakistan. Their only concern of untargeted kind of a subsidies just basically goes to the rich segment of the people of Pakistan rather than going to the poor segment of the people of Pakistan. So security of the poor segment of the Pakistan would be also the IMF concern. I think government has some plan for that thing, and I agree that the when it comes to the discussion on the table, the government of Pakistan and IMF will be on the same table.
All right. I would also like to understand a statement that came out by our Minister for State for Finance, Dr. Aisha Hawes Pasha. The first part of her statement concerns the IMF statement that spells out conditions to unlock the stalled bailout package as meddling in Pakistan's internal affairs. Do you feel the IMF has done such, has taken such measures with other countries in the past, or do you feel Pakistan is isolated or singled out as far as, you know, the IMF talking about Pakistan's internal affairs is concerned, which has been also highlighted by Dr. Aisha Hawes Pasha?
Agree with the minister's statement, but historically, I didn't see any kind of a statement that come from the agency like IMF. And I think at the same time, if I can read out the IMF statement, though they had a concern about the political certainty in Pakistan, but at the same time, they also mentioned that it's not our concern to discuss it. I agree with the Minister of State that those kind of statements should not come from the agency like an IMF or the World, because these are really the internal concern of the government or any government, right? But unfortunately here, I think the situation is becoming worse for us if we can see the overall economic situation of Pakistan. So that is why, like the IMF or other multilateral development, they are concerned that establishment of the certainty, I think, is primarily very important. Very important. It's a concern, but statement in terms of making it politicizing Pakistan and any other country because it's totally the internal matters of a country. And Afghanistan is a member of the IMF, and I think IMF needs to be concerned with economic security of the government of Pakistan rather than any political concern.
All right, Dr. Sahab, also Dr. Aisha Hawes Pasha has said that we will hopefully be reaching an agreement with the IMF before the budget is presented on the 30th of June, which is more or less in about a month's time. If it happens, and I hope it does happen with the way we've seen Mr. Porter reacting to the Pakistan program and Pakistan's review is concerned, how will this impact Pakistan's economic outlook in this next months or in the next year, in your point of view?
This will be a great achievement for the government of Pakistan. First, but it will definitely have the budget news. I would say, cautiously and very carefully now can construct the budget for Pakistan. Now, at this point of time, but we are kind of nowhere, I would say, because we are not exactly sure that whether IMF will come to support the forthcoming budget or not. So, firstly, if IMF is there, definitely it will support the budget, and it will also support a program that will increase the livelihood of Pakistan. Secondly, but it will really help us for the securing of the other development and friendly financing. We have seen it for the time that even the neighbors countries they are concerned that unless and until I is not there, we are not going to support you guys. And then same kind of a statement we also can see from the Material Development Bank as well. So security of the for funding or financing from multilateral development bank in friendly countries is another things. And third, what's up once we are IMF program, definitely kind of a discussion like hearing like Pakistan is going to default, blah blah blah. Those kind of sentiment will die because it will bring the optimistic to the market. It will bring the optimism scenario to the market. So positive sentiment that they will develop, and it will have eventually by the end of very good gesture for a Pakistan. Though it has some impact on the good side of Pakistan, I think it is also on a positive side to remain, I would say, in contraction or contraction kind of economy for a shorter time. Let, once we secure those kind of, I would say, the positive sentiment being positive for a longer time, definitely will relax can more growth over percentage of.
All right, Dr. Ghulam Samad, the conversation is a bit shaky because of the fact that I can't hear you properly. Nevertheless, the bullish momentum continues in the national bourse. It continued yesterday as well, with the benchmark index of representative shares rising amid positive triggers on the economic front. A lot of agencies say this is because of Nathan Porter's statement. They say that the upward trend in equities could be attributed to the acknowledgement by the IMF representative with regard to its engagement with Pakistan. Do you feel the impact of a statement by the IMF, and as soon as this ninth review is finalized, will have also a positive effect on our shares, on our equities, on our bourse?
Definitely, but my apologies if you can hear me properly, but definitely the market sentiments are going to stabilize. As you mentioned, you have seen the market sentiment from the capital market very established. It will have to restore the real value of the parity of the rupee in the dollar. And it will also help to bring in the stability of the market that would eventually help the investment scenarios in the market. So definitely the statement of the net will have a lasting impact for stability of the positive sentiment in the market in terms of attracting the investment, in terms of bringing um, increasing the domestic investment, the foreign investment, but it will also have to regain the value for the capital market in Pakistan, supported by the state and also by the argument you just mentioned.
All right. Now, you know, the assurance as far as this ninth review coming before, being finalized before the budget, has also been given by Ishaq Dar Saab, when he said that he although said that he would like the IMF to clear the ninth review before the budget, but he has said that they have asked for some more things. Again, we are ready to give that too. They say they will that give us the budget details, we will give it to them. But do you feel that the budget and the IMF's ninth review are the most interlinked of all the prerequisites that the IMF has asked Pakistan?
But Sahib, it should not be interlinked. If I heard you correctly, it should not be interlinked. Ninth review should be, if you can convince IMF, it should be dealt separately with the budget, right? But unfortunately, this time it's just been a coinciding thing, right? The budget and the ninth and the tenth review, they're just coinciding. If possibly, if we can make them separate, that would be a great achievement for us. if we link the ninth review with the budgetary framework, then possibly we can get some delays there. So what I would suggest that we should not link the ninth review with the budgetary framework, but certainly I
But
am extremely
isn't this
concerned
what the
about
IMF is asking Pakistan?
the budget. But sir, could you repeat your question?
I said, isn't this one of the preconditionalities of the IMF, that they want to know what the budget is all about and if the budget, comes up to the expectations of the ninth review?
But sorry, but sir, I lost you. But what I understand from the statement is that it should not be a precondition. Conditionality should be linked. I mentioned earlier that been discussed in my earlier reply, but I'm really accepting you properly.
All right. Thank you so very much, Dr. Saab. That was Dr. Ghulam Samad, Economist, CAREC Institute with the Asian Development Bank, talking to us. There was a bit of a lag as far as our conversation was concerned, but we did get the gist of what Dr. Saab was trying to say as far as the IMF-Pakistan relationship is concerned. Positive developments, whether it be the statement from Mr. Porter, whether it be the statement by Aisha Ghaus Pasha, whether it be Sagdar Saab also saying a lot of positivity is, the optimism ceased to be circulating within the circle in Pakistan as far as this ninth review is concerned, that it might be coming before the budget. Let's see. We will of course be updating you as and when that decision is also taken by the IMF. Let's come to our last three stories very quickly. The first concerns the 75 years of the United Nations peacekeeping and the celebration of the 75 years that was done at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs by both Pakistan and the United Nations. There was an event that was held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Pakistan, is amongst the largest troop contributing countries to the United Nations peacekeeping, with nearly 4,334 military and police personnel currently serving in 9 locations across the world. More than 200,000 Pakistani service women and men have served in 46 United Nations missions since the year 1960, including 171 who have lost their lives. This whole event that was held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in collaboration with the United Nations was to highlight the contribution of Pakistan as far as United Nations peacekeeping is concerned. Our Minister for State, Hinarabani Khar Sahiba, was representing the Pakistani side, who said Pakistan is proud of its long-standing association and contribution to United Nations peacekeeping. Then speaking of United Nations, let's also continue our talk of United Nations and climate change. It says the United Nations Weather Agency, which is the UN World Meteorological Organization, WMO, says that it is making the cryosphere a new top priority, saying that the melting of sea ice, glaciers and permafrost poses a global threat. The WMO countries met in Geneva. They called for increased funding for more coordinated observations, predictions and better data exchange, research and services. The polar regions, the Caribbean, the African continent will be affected by the cryosphere, and that is why this whole attempt to try to get together in order to move forward to curtail this effect of climate change. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about artificial intelligence. We've talked many a times, we've talked about ChatGPT. We know whenever we go to social media, that is what everybody is talking about, how it makes your notes much better, your presentations better. But global leaders, as per a certain meeting, should be working to reduce the risk of extinction from artificial intelligence technology. This was said by a group of industry chiefs and experts who warned on Tuesday and urged policymakers to equate its threat, the threat of the artificial intelligence, on par with risks posed by pandemics and nuclear war. This is a very important statement, that they are equating the dangers from the artificial intelligence with pandemics and nuclear war effects that could hamper the world. They talk about the risk of extinction from the artificial intelligence. They say this needs to be a global priority along with other societal state risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. More than 350 signatories wrote in a letter published by the non-profit Center for AI Safety. Now, of course, there are certain companies such as Meta, where the third godfather of AI, Jan LeCun, works, who did not sign this letter. So there are companies that are for it, there are certain companies that are not for it. Nevertheless, whereas on one side artificial intelligence has a lot going for you. There are a lot of risks that it could pose for the world, for society in general. So we need to be coherent about how to use AI, but intelligently, and not AI overwhelm you. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.